Okay, we are going to work on the occupancy rate data analysis problem. So like all of these problems, open it up in Cengage, and then you're going to have to look at the Excel sheet. So you can open up your Excel sheet. Now with this problem, we're analyzing uh, different hotels. So our company has a bunch of properties, so we can scroll down. How many is it? 200 hotels. So we have 200 hotels. This is a lot of data for you to just look at, right? So again, we're going to use pivot tables. So the first thing we want to calculate is the available room nights. So we can look at this and now how do we know how many room nights we have in a month? So if we're looking at 1 month and we need to know what month this is. So for me, it's enter a formula that results in the number of room nights available in June. So I know that June has 30 days. I think I learned a song about this at some point in my life. So I can go in here and say available room nights equals the number of rooms in my hotel times 30. That's great. And so I can put this in and just confirm that I did it correctly. So I go in here and check my work and guess what? That's correct, right? It's 30 nights, not 32, not 29. There's 30 nights in June. So we can copy this down. Again, click the little double click that little square on the bottom right corner of your cell. You could actually drag it down, but I don't want to drag down for 200 properties for every one of these answers we give. Okay, now we go to the next one, the occupied room nights. This is a little bit different. So one way you could do this is you could look at and say, okay, I have the number of nights that the guest stayed in the hotel times the number of guests that I had that did that, right? So I had 7,244 guests and that stayed for one night. And I could add that to 2,540 guests that stayed for 2 nights. And I could add that to 1,136 guests that stayed for 3 nights. Oh my goodness, I am bored already. So instead, we're going to use a great function. It's the sum of your products function. So sum product function, okay, where we can actually say we want to take this first row and we want to multiply all of those by this next row. Okay. And there we go. So that gave us 1 times this, 2 times this, 3 times this, 4 times this, 5 times this. Okay. And that gives us our answer. Then what I want to do is I'll copy this all the way down. Oh my goodness, look at that. Those numbers are huge. I just, my gut says something's wrong here. That this first hotel had 19,000 room nights and the next one had 32 million. Something's wrong with the formula. So I look at this and I'm like, oh, what were those formulas? Well, wait a second. I don't want to be multiplying those together. So I go back and say, oh, I need to actually freeze the frames for this blue here. I want to keep that the same. And so I need to actually put the dollar signs in front of those threes to freeze the frames. Now, if I trace it down, that looks better, right? So I can look at those formulas and yeah, that matches up. That's what I want to do is take this first, this F3 through J3. Now I'll multiply those by my F18 through J18, right? And do that all the way down and get my sum. So this is my total occupied room nights. So I can copy that first line and just throw it in just to make sure I did it correctly. I feel pretty confident, but yeah, we did it correctly. Okay, next we need to do this next line. We want the occupancy percentage. So this is our occupancy rate. Okay, they call it percentage in this, but it's our occupancy rate. And this is pretty easy, right? We know that our occupancy rate is just the occupied room nights divided by the available room nights. And there we go. It's even coming up in the percentage form for us. And so we could take that and we can trace it down. That looks great. Okay, so there we go. We have that. We can again throw it in, just make sure we have the right answer, but we feel pretty confident. Now the fun part, we get to create our pivot tables. Okay, so let's create our pivot table. So we'll do the same thing we always do. Just click somewhere on the side, click Insert Pivot Table. We want to create a new worksheet with our pivot table, and we select our pivot table range. So here we're going to start like B3. We're going to scroll all the way down and hold the shift button and choose there. We've got our L203 and we create our new pivot table. Makes me happy. Okay, question number 1 with the pivot table. How many properties have an occupancy rate of 90% or more in these 3 regions? B Sands, Obersley, and Worcestershire. Okay, I think that's where they make the sauce. So let's look. We need to know the occupancy rate, and we want to actually use this as a filter of 90%. We want to know how many properties. Okay, so let's look at this. We want a list of properties. Oh, in a region. So we actually need our region first. So we take our region. I'll put that above the properties. So we have certain regions where we want to look at properties, and we want to look at ones with specific occupancy rates. Okay, what else do we need? How many properties have an occupancy rate of 90% or more in those regions? Okay, cool. So let's actually look at the regions. So we have B, O, and W. So let's, okay, filter our regions out. We want the B Sands, Umbersley, and Worcestershire. Okay, so there it's just showing us our properties in those regions. And we want to filter by the ones that have an occupancy rate of 90% or more. So we need a value filter where it's greater than or equal to 90, not 90, 90%, right? So we could use 0.9, but there's our total amount. That's awesome, right? And so we can look at this, say, okay, we have 5, and we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we have 11 properties here that have an occupancy rate of 90% or more. That makes me happy. Right? I mean, I guess it would be happier if there were more of them, right? If you're running these hotels, you want all of your hotels to have a high occupancy rate. So let's look at number 2, Q2. What is the greatest number of one-night stays for any property in Campton region with fewer than 800 available nights? Okay, so we are looking at one-night stays. That's our value we want. We just want to filter to the Campton region. We want to filter for places with 800 available rooms or less, or just less than, fewer than. Okay, so let's look here. We don't need our occupancy rate anymore. We can remove that field. Instead, we want to look at the number of one-night stays. Okay, so we want to count of the one-night stays. We actually, let's see, was the greatest number for any property in the Campton region. So we just need that Campton region. Let's change our filter to just be the Campton region. Okay, that gives us all the properties in the Campton region, and we have the one-night stays. Okay, so we could look at this and say equals the max, right? What is the max rooms here for one-night stays? Okay, 7,765. Let's try this out. And what do we have? Oh no, we're missing something. Okay, let's read it again. What is the greatest number of one-night stays for any property in the region with fewer than 800 available rooms? Shoot, we need to filter out the 800 available rooms. Okay, so let's see. Number of rooms we can add in, and we add that in as value, right? I'm actually going to put that above the stays, right? And then we want to filter the properties so that our properties are just looking at we want a value filter where it is less than 800. So we want our number of rooms to be less than 800. There we go. That's a shorter list. So we want to equal the max of these, the number of one-night stays. There we go. So now we say it's 6,692 one-night stays. I wonder which hotel that is that has it. Let's look this up. We do it equals X lookup, right? And we want to look for that number in this list here, and then return the property name. So there we go. It's property number 136 had 6,692 one-night stays. There it is. I see it right there. That's great. Let's put this in. Yeah, that's what we were looking for. Okay, let's look at Q3. So Q3, what percentage of the guests in the Grassmere and Kingman regions stayed more than one night? So, okay, so this is Grassmere and Kingman. So we change our regions again. Keep changing our regions, right? So Grassmere and Kingham. Okay, so we have those regions. Now, we don't actually need the properties anymore, right? So the properties can be taken out of here because we don't need that. But instead, we want to know the number of nights that everybody stayed. So let's look at the number of nights that everybody stayed. 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we can look at this and we can say, okay, in these regions, we have a total number of nights, people that stayed one night, total number of people that stayed 2, 3, 4, and 5 nights. So if we want, let's look at the question again, what percentage of the guests in these regions stayed more than one night? Okay, so let's look. What's in, let's say, stayed more than one night. Okay, and then the total who stayed. So see the number who stayed more than one night, though, that's just going to be the sum of the people who stayed 2, 3, 4, or 5 nights. And the total number who stayed, well, that's going to be the sum of people who stayed 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 nights. Okay, and so the percent who stayed more than one, right, is going to be equal to the those who stayed more than one divided by the total number. So that gives us 0.4317. We want to change this into, let's format this into a percentage here. There we go. We've got our percentage. So there we go, 43.17%. Awesome. Okay, Q4. What is the difference between the average occupancy rate in the Dorset region versus the Plockton region? Okay, we know what we're doing first, right? We're going to switch our filters. We always do this. Dorset versus Plockton, right? Yours are going to be different. I'm deleting all these. If you don't delete your other math that you had on the side, it can sometimes mess up as your pivot table tries to expand. It doesn't have anywhere to expand to. So we are looking at the difference between the average occupancy rate. Oh, this is good, right? So we know, okay, we don't need these anymore. Okay, let's get rid of these. Let's get rid of these. We don't need our number of nights anymore, right? Instead, we are looking at our occupied rooms. Okay, so there we go. We have our number of occupied rooms in those two regions. What? We don't really want the sum of the occupied rooms. Actually, we don't want the occupied rooms at all. We want the occupancy rate. Oh my goodness. You can't have 1,000% occupancy rate. You know what it is? It's the sum of the occupancy rate. We actually want the average. That's for the average. So get down to your value field settings. Instead of having the sum, we want to change that to the average. There we go. So we have the average occupancy rate. So what I can do is I can say, well, I want to look at the difference. So that minus this. So it's a 3% difference. Now, 3%, I could put 3% in here, right? But what's it going to do? It's going to say it's wrong. Oh, I need to round the percentage to 2 decimal places. Okay. So round the percentage to 2 decimal places. Okay, we can do that. So we just go in here and switch everything, and we want to add a couple decimal places. There we go. 2 decimal places. It's 2.75% is the difference. 2.75. Yeah, that feels better. Okay. And you can figure out Q5 on your own. So I hope this was helpful, and you have a wonderful day doing pivot tables.